So I got to play some Phantom Blade Zero at Gamescom this year. I've been quite excited for this game since it was announced. I think one of the highlight trailers for me is when they showcased that sort of puppeteer boss that they unveiled like a few months ago. I think it was early in 2025, with those 7 enemies that are controlled by that one main host. Yeah, and that boss fight was pretty cool looking, and I thought maybe it was too good to be true, but believe it or not, at this Gamescom demo that I tried this week at the show, it was actually that exact boss fight. So I have some thoughts on Phantom Blade Zero, because the studio behind the game, S-Game, they struggle to define what Phantom Blade Zero is, because they say they're inspired by a whole bunch of games, some of them being Souls-like, some of them being Dark Souls. I also get a bit of Ninja Gaiden in the game itself as well during the demo. There was also a bit of First Berserker Kazan, which I played earlier this year, and I thought that was an excellent game, so I sort of felt that was very similar. It's a lot fast-paced. I would say it's similar to Sekiro at the same beat, but at the same time it doesn't have the same Souls-like elements. Like, you don't, well, in the demo you don't level up, so you don't get XP from killing enemies. The developer even said at one point that I should run past the enemy that I was trying to fight, because he said you don't get anything from them. That was only because I was trying to get to the boss fight before my time ended. So yeah, you don't get XP for killing enemies. At the same time, because you get no XP, when you die, you don't leave your XP behind. And when you find these shrines, which are sort of like the bonfires from Dark Souls and stuff, they got bells on the end of them. When you bring those bells, it does refill your health, but it doesn't respawn the enemies either. So yeah, it's a bit different from a Souls-like game. I don't know exactly how the leveling system is going to work, because the game didn't have the leveling system in the game itself. The demo I played didn't have it. But at the same time, I'm not sure what the push and what the drive would be for the game if you don't level up. You know, you get new weapons and you unlock new skills, but I'm not entirely sure how that all accumulates together to create a sort of RPG experience. So right now we're looking at like a really strong hack and slash action game with very little RPG to it. But I really did enjoy the demo that I played during Gamescom. It saw me explore like a mountain sort of fort area with a whole bunch of these supernatural enemies. Obviously the game is more supernatural driven. They were very difficult to kill. They were fast paced. Some of the enemies that were from those puppet controlled enemies without faces are around corners and you have to fight them. Yeah, it's your traditional sort of military camp invaded by spiritual creatures, you know, that narrative that we've seen a few times in the past by a whole bunch of games. I don't think that Phantom Blade Zero is doing much new in terms of its stylized approach when it comes to the enemies and the sort of like design of the game, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. I do think that it was enjoyable from what I played. Combat is obviously the strongest point in the Phantom Blade Zero. You play as, I think his name is Zero, that's why the game is called Phantom Blade Zero, but he can wield a whole bunch of different weapons. The gear system is likely the most unique I've seen. You get your L2 and your R2 weapons. So your L2 weapon is what you have equipped at your time. So whatever you're using as your square and your triangle attack is basically your L2 weapon. And then your R2 weapon is a weapon that you can spawn out of thin air, and that it has a certain charge to it. So later in the demo I killed a boss and I actually got that weapon and I could use that weapon on my R2. So using these weapons sort of use a charge. So you only get a certain amount of charges, and then obviously when you rest of the bonfire you refill those charges. Another one that I got on the R2 was this fire breathing dragon mask cloak thing that he just whips out and he puts on his head, and then all of a sudden he's busy breathing fire at enemies, and it's quite strong. It's also cool to use, even though I do feel like it's sometimes a bit random. The boss fight weapon I got was this giant hammer clam sort of mallet thing that was also quite fun to use. Again, these weapons are limited in charges, so you can't just put them into your combo because you only get a certain amount of uses for it. It also doesn't have iframes, so when you're pulling off these moves, the iframes don't block attacks, so you will take damage, and so you can't just spam them and then hope for the best that enemies aren't going to hit you. In terms of your L2 weapon, so that has its own charge up, so when that charge is full, you can essentially perform like an automatic cool ass combo that pulls off a whole bunch of moves by just pressing L2, but you got to wait for that bar to charge obviously. That bar takes a while to charge. It charges in combat, and you can also, I think you can pick up items for that, but they were very limited in the demo. But yeah, the L2 weapon, as soon as that bar is charged, it performs like an automatic combo depending on whatever weapon you have equipped. You can equip 2 different types of weapons on both of those slots. You get 2 L2 weapons and 2 R2 weapons, which means you can essentially have 2 basic attack weapons, which are again your square and your triangle, and you combine those together to perform your combo attacks. And then yeah, the game's got a similar parry and block system to what we've seen from other Sekiro, like Ninja Gaiden like games, where enemies perform attacks and you can block them and parry them with L1, and then you can dodge with R1. The blue attacks are your dodge attacks, so you have to dodge that in time, and then the red attacks are the L1 attacks, and those are your parry attacks. The parry window is quite wide. I won't say it's super tight like say first Berserker Kazan, but I did feel like it was satisfying, and the combat was still quite difficult even with the parry window that wasn't incredibly tight. Altogether, the combat does feel great. I mean, you've got these L2 and R2 weapons, then you have all these skills that you can perform with the square and triangle attack to perform cool combos, and then obviously performing parries and dodges also help a lot. I mean, beyond the parry that results in a counter attack, just parrying an enemy over and over and over depletes their stamina bar. And I remember it was quite cool to parry the boss over and over and over. He did like a spin to win attack, so as you were spinning, I kept parrying that spin attack perfectly, which was quite nice because that depleted his bar completely almost, and then I just hit him once and he fell to the ground, and then I could chain together some attacks. The parrying is probably the most satisfying part of the combo for me, because I do love timing a parrying attack, especially with the clings and the clangs and the glowing icons and all that stuff. It makes it a bit easier to parry enemy attacks that way. The dodge is also satisfying, I won't lie. I mean, you can dodge as much as you want, but it depends on how you want to approach combat. I did feel like most of the attacks can be parried or dodged, so that's completely up to you. Sometimes the dodges will not always result in you being safe, because an enemy's reach might be a bit higher or further than the dodge that you're performing. And then I also encountered a secret boss, which the developer told me about in the demo. There's a boss in the game that if you don't fight, so you can fight her, but if you run away, she just drops into the final fight of the demo. So I found that quite interesting, how it could trigger this fight. I don't know if the full game is going to have a similar system, but I did think it was quite a cool little hidden Easter egg. The developer says that because you don't fight her, she comes to hunt you down, because the puppeteer boss is kind of her servant or something, and then they end up fighting you together. So that was quite a cool little Easter egg. And yeah, I did die on that boss, but it was the end of the demo, so I didn't retry. It basically results in both of them coming into the arena at once on the second phase, meaning you have to like juggle them both at the same time. That will likely be one of the toughest things to do, because yeah, I mean, the one boss was already tough, and she was also quite tough, so it would take like a few hours or a few tries for me personally to redo that, because yeah, I had to basically learn both moves. I would say that the boss fights are quite flashy and fun. I fought the chief disciple of the 7 stars, which is that puppeteer fight that we saw in the trailer. It basically had me fighting all of the other 7 enemies before attacking the boss itself. I obviously died on that boss because of the whole secret mechanic thing and that other lady coming in and ruining the fun. But even the big overweight fat guy, his boss fight was really cool. He's very slow, so it makes the parrying mechanic quite easy to master, and even he has a cool mechanic that he would like throw dust in your face and put sand over the screen, so you can't really see what he's doing. I found that really cool. I don't think I've seen that happen in quite a lot of games, but essentially he kicks sand in the air and it covers your screen with sand so that you can't see his next attacks. I did think that was quite a fun thing. The boss fights are flashy. They're really flashy, and when you time that parry perfectly or that block perfectly, you know, Zero performs like a cool flashy attack and skill, and the camera flies around, and it's cool. It's cool to look at. I feel like it's satisfying to play. So yeah, they've got the boss fights nailed down 100%, and that sort of theme carries over into the main game as well. When you're busy attacking enemies and stuff and exploring the world, all of that flash is in that part of the game as well. So you can also stealth attack enemies from behind if you sneak up on them. I'm not sure how deep this goes, to the point where I don't know if you can sneak around the map and you can take them down, but there are some enemies that you can press triangle on if they don't see you, and you can essentially backstab them. It is more like a backstab more than a stealth assassination. It would be like a backstab when you have to compare it to the likes of like Dark Souls or Elden Ring. I won't say that Phantom Blade Zero feels remarkably different in any way compared to say Ninja Gaiden or perhaps First Berserker Kazan. I'm not entirely sure how deep the game goes when it comes to its gear system, and it's probably the RPG system, which was lacking in the demo that I played. But I did think that the game in general was quite fun. I can see myself playing this game. I did enjoy First Berserker Kazan this year, and I platinumed that game, and it was probably one of the best games I played this year. So this is sort of up my alley, and I thought that this would be quite fun. The demo definitely made me want more. Again, I just don't know how deep the game is going to go, because I feel like at the moment there's very little character progression. When I say there's no RPG system, obviously, I don't know how the character grows with the enemy scaling, because there's no real growth in the demo, and you get like a boss weapon that you can pick up and use, but other than that your character doesn't get better in any way, unless the design of the game makes you stronger through weapons and items that you find after progressing through certain story missions or something. The world itself is also quite cool. You can explore every nook and cranny. There's a whole bunch of collectibles to find. I did find that the parkour and the moving around was a bit floaty at times. I kind of feel like it's got that Lords of the Fallen version 1 floating, where your character would sometimes feel like he's not stuck on the ground, and it's easy to run off the ledge and walk off certain edges and lifts and everything. There was actually a moment where we walked off the ledge, where we walked off a lift that was going up, because the character just feels like he slides around a little bit. So I do wish that the character was a bit more footed when it comes to traversal and exploring the world. It also feels like the combat is, obviously you are floaty around the combat because of the stylized combat that it's got, but when the character's walking around, I just feel like the character just needs to be a bit more weighted down, so that you don't like fall off ledges and miss steps and everything. I was really looking forward to playing Phantom Blade Zero at Gamescom. I had my appointment booked a few weeks ago, so when I did play it, I was very excited, and it was as fun as I was hoping it was going to be. I do enjoy like a Souls-like game, and again, like while this isn't 100% Souls-like, I do think it's quite strong, and it's got the Ninja Gaiden vibe 100%. And yeah, I mean, if this is something that you're into, yeah, let me know if you have any questions about the game. The game is being developed by S-Game. It's in development for PS5 and PC right now. I'm not sure what release window it's planned for at this point, but the studio is very excited about the project. When I was speaking to them at Gamescom, they expressed a lot of love, and they said that the trailers have been doing really well. So yeah, show this game some love and wishlist it if you can. Hopefully we'll be able to share more on this game closer to the launch, and yeah, hopefully we get to play more of it, because yeah, I really had a good time with it.
Nothing can separate us. Not even in